we go, black magic. Now we should be live, I hope. I was going to check the stream. I'm going to check the stream options actually. Yep, we should be good. You should all be able to see me going now. And well, welcome, thank you, and good morning. We just had a typhoon pass, probably the first typhoon in since 1951, since they started recording, which went east to west instead of west to east. It was very strange. So we got a very, very boring typhoon at night time, where we normally get really strong, crazy, windy typhoons. So why is this thing showing? I don't know if you guys can hear me. If you guys can send a message, if you can. It says stream health is... It's not giving me a positive view. We're not getting an update. So just waiting to find out why I'm not getting any view of my... we're getting a really slow stream. I'm just going to restart this because something really bad, something odd is going on. Hold on a sec. Are we going to work? Are we working? Yep, no, that looks better. I don't know why the kbps was so low. Okay, I'm just waiting for it to show up on my live stream, so if this is going to come in delayed, I want to actually make sure the stream is passing through. Anyway, it's not coming from mine for some reason. Ah, there we go. Now I'm coming out live. But I'm coming out really, really low quality on mine. I don't know why. Ah, that looks better. Okay, so if you can all see me. Ah, yeah, there we go. Now I can see myself, so it's working. Okay, good morning. Now it looks like I've got all green lights all over my screen. The stream is going to work. So it was coming up kind of like your stream health is really low and sending out like 160 bits per second, which was useless. So anyway, we just had a typhoon pass, as I just said before. If you picked it up, the most boring typhoon we've ever had in Japan. It passed from east to west, which is the first time in history, at least known history, which is since 1951, since they started recording. And so normally it hit Tokyo first, which is very odd. Normally it comes up through past Okinawa, it makes a mess of Okinawa as usual, and then makes a mess of Kyushu, and then sort of kind of gets very soft by the time it hits Tokyo. This time it went in reverse, so we've got a climate change or not, I don't know. What I'd like to do first is grab this. Now, just part of the reason this is late is, and part of the reason there's a lot of stuff missing here is I only just put all this back. I had to move out everything here. Absolutely everything away and get my aircon cleaned, and it came out with this. I should put up a video. I got my daughter to video it because I was out. This bucket full of mold and dust and crap. It was pretty gross. So it was very necessary, and I have my aircon on a lot, as you might imagine. And so I've got to make sure I have everything now. I do have. Okay. I put everything in drawers, and I have so many drawers here, I just sort of dumped everything in nearby drawers. And then, as a consequence, it's sort of like, oh, where did I put the microphone cable and stuff like that? So this month's kind of prize is another Kozoi thing. It's called the Aegis, and it's a little sort of 24192 like iPhone or smartphone kind of high-res amplifier. It doesn't do DSD. The other one I did at first had DSD, and it will power iems. It's kind of outputs 60 milliwatts at 16 ohms, so it's kind of for iems pretty much only, or stuff that's super sensitive. Well, anyway, it's a cool little product. I can't remember how much they sell for, $200-300 or something like that. And anyway, that's going to be for the live draw, which I'm going to do right now. So for that, I chopped up everyone's names who is on my list of paid patrons this month and chucked them in this basket, and I'm going to draw one. So we're going to see who the lucky person is. And the lucky person is... Put the basket out of the way. Is Kai. So Kai, I won't say your last name just for the sake of privacy, because people ask about that. Kai is the lucky winner, if you choose to accept it, and of a Kozoi Aegis. So I'll put that there with a note, and I'll send you an email or message on Patreon with that. so we don't forget. So congratulations, Kai. And thanks for being a supporter, and thank you everyone. It's actually made a huge difference, and it allowed me to do a lot of stuff which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So in my situation I didn't talk about was that I work teaching in schools here, but this year they fired everyone and rehired everyone at a much lower rate, and then for the change the jobs that we do, and the jobs that we were doing before, they hired out a company who they pay much more per hour. It's a massive rort. I don't want to talk about it too much, but basically it was kind of like, well, give up the hobby and go full time, or try and make something of the hobby, at least make it pay a bit of money. And so, and then shift around other work, which I managed to shift around okay, because I took over some other people's work, and that kind of balanced things out. So it was very, very kind of close to the line there. So thank you everyone, you've actually made this continue to happen, and I hope we can make more of it in the future. So with that being said, I just sort of last minute pasted all the questions. Okay, so you should all be able to hear me quite clearly. I didn't actually check the mic level. I'm not clipping, am I? Oh, that's good. Okay, the problem I have is that I'm going to hear a bit of noise at the moment. I'm going to adjust the mic. I have a kind of cheapish shotgun mic, which I got off Mass Drop, which is really funny. It's been good. It's done pretty well for the audio, especially if I turn the level down and then put it really up close. It's worked out really well. So the last couple of videos I did that, and that worked out really well. Finally, actually, Centrance has coming out with their product they designed in 2014, but was designed to be a mic pre, portable mic pre, which they based off their M8 chassis, but it had a portable mic pre inside. And actually, they ran out of money. They only got about 50 grand to produce it, and then Michael ran out of money, and it became like, oh, we'll try and get this done. But in the end, while he was trying to sell, get other business going and other stuff going, he redesigned it to be a much, much better product. So that's going to arrive this coming month, I hope. Apparently the shipping is starting to happen, and that will be really kick-ass. It's going to be better than expected. But I actually sold off a really nice metric halo thing years ago in anticipation of this thing arriving, and it never arrived, which is a pity, because it would have been a really nice mic pre. But that's what I've been holding out for before getting better mics. I mean, I could get other mics, but yeah, that's basically what I'm working on. But it'll be 2 inputs, so I'm going to take it to the shows and use it for doing interviews too. So it should be pretty cool. Anyway, that will improve the sound situation. So that's what's happening there. Other interesting news before I start getting into questions. Nao Tsunoda of Sony. Now he's the famous engineer, the headphone engineer. He's left the company, he's retired from the company. He's going to do some work for heatwave, I don't know, the phone company, for a while, and then he's going to start his own business. So, which is going to be really interesting. So he's going to have his own audio business, and what's he going to create? And I think it'll be interesting because there are a few ex-Sony people, like the Ocharaku guy, who was ex-Sony. He designed his own iems, would be really interesting. He is ex-Sony. There have been a few other ex-Sony people. They haven't been quite so successful, but some of them are really talented, and to do stuff on their own, they come up with really interesting stuff. I wish they'd all group up together and form their own company, actually, because they could make a really kick-ass system. But it'd be interesting if he designed his own headphones. We can only hope. But he's not said what he's going to make. But in 3 years, life is going to get interesting as he starts up his stuff. Oh, thank you, Wick, for the comment about working in Japan. Yeah, it's kind of scummy here. Even if I get a really good, basically, unless you're highly qualified and highly fluent in Japanese, you're basically screwed here. Whereas I could go back in Australia, and I worked with people who had very dodgy English, but it was fine. You could communicate enough to get the job done. I mean, yeah. So it's kind of an interesting situation living here, but I'm lucky in that I could sell I inherited a house, sold a house in Australia, and I could buy a house here, and then that means I don't have to worry about rent and other stuff. Although I do have to worry about expenses and not having my kids put holes in the walls and destroy stuff, and as that. So I'm actually amazed I've made it this far. I mean, a lot of people I know, just bail out after a while, even after years. So it can be pretty stressful. Thank you, Pandemonium, for the comment on the reference remastered review. I've got, and this is what happens. I clean up and I don't know where I put stuff. Give me a second to think. I put all the iems are floating around. So we have the UE Live. I think I showed it last stream as well. That's been if you've already read reviews of the UE Live. There's my one. It's got some very mixed comments. The sound quality. When they say albums, they say it received critical acclaim, which meant it was like technically a good album, but nobody liked it. And this is the UE Live in perfect description, which is ironic in it because it's designed for musicians, and it's very clever technology. It's got that new funky little cable system, which I'm probably slightly out of focus if I try and pull up the camera. It has everything about it is really technically excellent, but the sound is just not exciting. So I've been talking to Yui about that, and a few people have already lambasted them much harsher than I have. But that'll get reviewed as is. They sent me a box, which again, I don't know where I put it now. I found it. They have a little thing used for connecting to the output of the earpiece output of the thing. It's like a impedance matcher with a little battery-powered impedance matcher to see if it made any difference. It made a tiny bit of difference, but not anything significant. So that's all gonna go in the review when that comes out. So that'll be an interesting one. Let's see. Okay, so where are we at? Weren't you supposed to talk about something kind of amp cheaper than NFB 11? Our law of diminishing returns. I'll do that after the Q&A. So we have a whole bunch of questions, and I frantically cut and pasted them in, so there's a chance I missed someone's question. I hope I didn't. They were kind of scattered over a whole bunch of chat too, so I may have missed something. Albert C. asked me huge bunch of questions. He says he has several copies of the Pink Floyd album Dark Side of the Moon. One copy in particular stands out as the best, a stereo DSF rip of the 30th anniversary edition hybrid SACD from EMI. And it sounds better than the 2496 of the 2011 remastered, and the 2000. Well, it's remastered. It probably is. Sometimes I remember this. I think it was Steve Hoffman. I think he remastered an album and he didn't change anything, and he was acclaimed for being the great remaster. And he hadn't actually changed anything. He said there's nothing. He didn't want to just change it for the sake of changing it. If there's nothing to be changed, he didn't change it. So he just did it exactly as it originally was mastered, pretty much. And that's the thing. You sometimes get remasters, and I don't know. I guess it's like some kind of weird personal preference of whoever does the remastering, and or maybe they're aiming for some. I have no idea. It'd be interesting thing to do a video on remastering maybe in the future in music, because it's kind of relevant. And yeah, some of the remasters have come out completely crap. I mean, they compress them, or I don't know what they do. The Dark Side of the Moon. Now, interestingly, and I don't have a link handy. The console that was recorded with was sold a few months ago. It was online. They were selling the actual console. It was in working condition, but because they were upgrading the studio, they were selling off the console. And I don't know who bought it, probably some enthusiast in California, I very much bet. But it gave a particular sound to all the albums. So I guess, yeah, the mastering will probably be the cause. And that can be, as a huge problem with music, because I remember, like, Enya, you have fantastic music. But it was the first early digital mastering, and oh god, the quality was terrible. And it's like, oh my god, she has such a beautiful voice, and the mastering is so crap. And it was the back when I was buying CDs first in the 90s, you'd look on the CD, and the corner would say AAD, so it'd be analog recording, analog mastering, digital, final. The final would always be digital. And then you'd sometimes have ADD, where it was digitally remastered. And then the worst initially was DDD, all digital. And Enya was all digital. It was terrible. And I don't know what it was. Early digital was kind of crappy, as we know. So it'll be interesting once Chords, Rob Watts comes out with his Davina analog to digital converter. It'll be very, very interesting to see what comes of that, because the last super legendary ADC was Mike Moffat's one-off thing he did for the MoFi recordings. What's his name? I can't remember anything this morning, but there were some legendary ADCs made, and some of the stuff done with like Dan Lavery's gold stuff was really fantastic. Anyway, it seems the equipment has quite an effect. But now, we're getting freeze frames. Yep, mine's gone down. Okay, I don't know what's happening with my stream. Okay, I'm back, and it's kind of, it should be better now. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know where it dropped out. Mine just suddenly just looked down. It was red, and I'm trying to talk and glance at the screen at the same time. Something is going funky here. It could be that I'll just quit some stuff. What happened was I have also installed Amazon Drive on here to back up some photos, and I think it may be responsible for some funky network issues. So yeah, it may be interrupting stuff, but I turned it off. I paused it, and it still may be interrupting things. Why are we getting... Okay, let me just have a check. What is... I'll just let me kill something on here, and it might be able to fix it. Okay, Amazon Drive may be responsible for my live stream problems. So hopefully that'll... I've killed it, so hopefully it'll be alright. Okay, so I was saying... Don't know what I was saying. Where did I get up to before it started cutting out? Dropped at remastering subject. Okay, so I was talking about we're talking about remasters, and you know, it's a personal thing depending on the remastering thing. And I think it was a Steve Hoffman. I don't know if did I talk about. Did you get as far as Steve Hoffman, where he remastered? I think it was him who remastered something by not changing anything, which was because the original was fine. And you know, and I was going back to the CDs of things like Enya. Enya was all digital. It was recorded digital, it was early digital, digitally remastered, and the sound quality was crap, even if the singing was great. And I remember looking on CDs, and you see in the corner, it was AAD, was analog, digital, analog recording, analog mastering, digital final. They're all digital final on CD, obviously. Then the worst ones, way back in the early 90s, were digital, which was all digital recording, mastering, and final, and like Enya was terrible. So it'll be interesting to see how good things come out with Rob Watt's Davina project. So I hope I got that far. So jealous of the IFI gear in the back. It's been pretty good. I've been listening to it, lately. I'll talk about that in a bit. I want to do the questions first because I kind of owe these guys the Q&A. So favorite music, original score, soundtrack. The soundtrack I really liked was Inception, the one for Inception. But Zimmerman, you know, his stuff is really fun to listen to. It's really it's good. It's well recorded. It's really dramatic. It's really, but I mean, I think the Inception was to me a brilliant movie, and the soundtrack, you know, kind of really added to it. It was, even though it was kind of like even though it was kind of like the character development was a bit shallow. I think that the actual movie itself was really excellent. So I think the concept was really excellent. Favorite headphones for watching movies. I ordered the Odyssey Mobius, so that's for that purpose. So they should probably end up being my favorite. If I can get, I think you can only get 5.1 working over and 7.1 only working over USB, but it won't work over wireless, obviously, because multiple channels is just going to require huge amounts of bandwidth and require a lot of loss. I'm just going to quickly do something here. Just noticing that Amazon Drive is being a pain in the butt, even though it shouldn't be. Where are we? The funky thing, I'm just going to kill off, even though I hard killed these processes, the Amazon processes. Yep, okay, that should be fine. Okay, sorry about this. This is going to be a bit of... This is what happens where you have to sometimes fix... Fix problems in your own computer. And I'm just killing this Amazon Drive thing, which is being a pain in the butt and causing the stream to screw up. This is going to be a pain in the butt. I'm just killing Amazon Drive using very manual commands here because it's screwing things up majorly. Okay. Okay. Have I killed it? It kind of kept reviving itself automatically, and I wanted to make sure it's very dead and not screw up my stream. Sorry about that. Anyway, interruptions you get from computer issues. Okay, where is the treble dip in your hearing? I don't know yet. I've actually got to test that. Test that exactly. It'd be interesting to test that against measurements of iems and headphones and see if it actually correlates to any experiences. But I was discussing it with someone who was trying headphones with and they both knew, with a friend, and they both knew where their treble dip was, and then one person found the headphones dark, and the other person had found the headphones, and he found the headphones bright, and his treble dip corresponded with the peak and with those headphones, so it's a valid thing. I should actually see if I can get more technical info on it. Someone else was going to post on it, and I didn't want to jump the gun with them. They said not to, so but now they've talked about it anyway. How do you train your hearing to tell apart different frequencies? Practice. I think you get used to it with music. Like so you listen to music through different headphones, and then you find out where basically you get out an EQ and you listen to music, and then you say, okay, you bump up say 2 kilohertz, and you go, oh, well the violins come through more strongly, or the voice sounds different in this way. You basically stuff around with an EQ, like maybe a 31 band EQ for a while, and then eventually you figure it out. That's what I did, and then it kind of becomes obvious. But I don't like to go into too much detail, like I see some reviewers go, oh, and it seems to have a dip at this particular frequency and that frequency. I mean, if you're a normal person watching a video, you're going to go, oh, what does that mean? That it has a dip here or a peak there. I prefer to just keep it simple: low bass, mid bass, kind of lower mids or upper mids, and lower treble, high treble, stuff like that. Because if start keep it simple, vocals and maybe drums and rumble you get with bass heavy music and that kind of thing. Just keep it kind of simple, because in the end that's what it comes down to. I mean, the more technical you get, you're only going to be talking to a tiny number of people. Manufacturers say there's a difference in preference between people of different descent. Have you noticed any trends? I've noticed there are different music trends, like in countries, but I mean, Asia, well, it's strange. Like China has all this classical Chinese music, and you have Europe, which has classical music, or more, I suppose, a lot of audiophiles like classical music. Yeah, sort of a bit, but I haven't really looked into it. But there obviously are some kind of trends with. We discuss it occasionally with people like from Asian countries, and they say, yeah, there seems to be trends in this kind of way with people in our country versus what Westerners think, that kind of thing. But the problem with, say America, there's a huge diversity of people out there, so the opinions you get are very diverse, whereas if you get, say, everyone in Thailand, for example, well, they're going to be mostly Thai people, and they're going to be kind of maybe more of a consensus, I'm not sure. I'll just come down to music preference, I'm not quite entirely sure. What causes hiss with sensitive iems and daps? Well, hiss it's just increased sensitivity. It's the same with my mic. If I turn up the sensitivity of this, you'll pick up more background hiss, because you're lifting up the level of the background noise as well. So there's always some background noise, but if you turn the sensitivity up, that background noise becomes more noticeable. And so to reduce the noise, actually, you have to turn up the output impedance, not down. So sometimes, I think one of the reasons for, say, the high BR6 having a 10 ohm output impedance was to reduce noise. Because if you get it right down low to almost zero, sometimes it can emphasize the noise rather than de-emphasize it. I'm not entirely sure why this happens, but having it, it's kind of, manufacturers have a choice of, for choice of one thing, it causes another problem. And especially in daps, which are tiny little boxes which you have to cram a lot of electronics into without them interfering with each other. I mean, to the degree that Sony made a low noise micro SD card, and it actually, a friend tried it and said, oh, it actually makes an improvement. So everything injects noise into everything, and it's kind of working to keep that as low as possible. So it's just a well, the noise is caused by background electronics, and it's just the more sensitive the electronics are, or the transducer is to sound in general. So let's say if you have like the noise level is here, and then your listening level is here. Let's say that you have low sensitivity. Well, see, my hands were in view. So you have a low sensitivity thing. You're going to turn the volume up more. So the difference between the volume level and the noise level is going to be high. If the sensitivity is low, then you're only going to turn up the volume a bit, so the noise level is going to be more a significant percentage of the volume of sound. So that's the disadvantage of low sensitivity. And that's why actually a certain person who I don't want to talk about cheated in his measurements by measuring stuff at above minus 0 dB, like plus 10 dB, and then it lifts the noise floor and makes everything look noisier than it really is, which is dodgy measuring. So we all know who we're talking about, and that's just an example. What causes hiss here? I felt like a lot of higher-end headphones tend to be open-back design. Well, basically, in a pair of headphones, which I've got here hanging here, actually the ones I used to check there was no noise in my camera. So this is I'm going to talk about these in a future video, actually. These are some DIY headphones. They use drivers from Symphones, which I may have talked about before. I had some hanging behind there that are just hanging somewhere else at the moment, because I rearranged everything. So they're obviously open back, and I think that's in focus enough. So what happens is when you have a transducer moving, it's moving in two directions. So it's causing a sound wave in this direction, and it's causing a sound wave in this direction. So what happens is if there's anything obstructing that, and it's simple, you get a pair of open back headphones, put your hands over them, you'll hear it muffles the sound. So there are various ways, they have their AKG has these kind of back ports, which, AKG I don't have, no, they're sitting somewhere else as well. They have a series of like back port kind of like passive speaker things in there to absorb that sound wave. And, there are other methods of dealing with it, like making them semi-open backed or what have you. But to fully isolate noise is actually really, really difficult, because you end up, that means how do you deal with that back wave? You have to have some other means. And, the effect it has on different drivers, varies. It can affect the sound stage on something like these drivers, which are grader-like drivers. You can really hear it on the latest top-of-the-line planers and electrostats, where even your hands are out here. The reflection of the sound off your hands, even this far out with Susvaras, which I haven't brought back here yet either. Even if I put Susvara, imagine I'm wearing Susvaras at the moment because I don't have them here, and even if I put my hands here, I can hear the effect of their sound. Even actually with these headphones, because there are drivers there, I can hear the effect of the reflections on back through the drivers, even moving my hands around, and it's very sensitive with electrostats. So you imagine closing the back of something, it causes a lot of stuff they have to deal with. And you look like Sennheiser has a very innovative idea that they had a concave thing piece of glass that reflects the sound out into maybe some padding material or some absorption material. So I haven't looked in detail into that, but they have a very clever solution for that. So it's kind of a real challenge. So high-end stuff, assumes that you're not going to be going out into the bus and listening, because that's just got a noisy environment. But you're going to be, sitting at home relaxing and then listening, and there's going to be no background irritation. And the only background irritation you have is like your kids and that kind of thing, or family interrupting you. So stop listening to music, start doing stuff. So what was your first audio setup? It was a pair of MB Quart QP55s plugged into the back of my computer. Actually, no, my first audio setup that was nice was hand-me-downs for my father when he upgraded his system, and it was some Pioneer amp, and we bought a pair of Paradigm Atom speakers, which I don't know if they're still made. They're equivalent size to kind of this, but obviously not nearly as good. And some bits and pieces like that, and a CD player. We got a $200 CD player. This is back in the early 90s, where a $200 CD player was crap. And I had a few CDs, and I listened to them, and I had a tuner. I listened to, if there are any Aussies out there who ever watched this, Triple J, because I was a teenager, and that was my first setup. And I had headphones, obviously, to listen when we got some nice headphones, which were $200 retail, discounted $15, which was a huge sum of, much bigger sum of money back, for headphones was huge back in 1990, whatever. There were I tried AKG K1000s back then too, and if I'd had any idea about the future, I would have bought a pair. I would have saved up my money and bought a pair, but I didn't. But anyway, that was an interesting thing. It's amazing the stuff I've missed out on, which I should have got. Listening to some Miles Davis for the chord Mojo. Why does DSD intermittently click? DSD is kind of funny. I don't totally know the technical details, but some DSD playback things will output zeros for when the music stops. Because of the way DSD works, it just kind of causes a click when it cuts off. It's to do with the transport, whatever's sending out. It's not to do with the Mojo as such. So detecting the end of DSD, it's kind of, this is the format of the digital. It has to be the easy way. Things like, I think it's Rune and some things do, they send out just zeros as at the end to stop the click. But a lot of stuff does click. It's just DSD is not really a format designed for just playing straight through to things. It wasn't designed for that originally anyway. So it's DSD is kind of a kludge, so that's why you get things like clicks. And it could, the circuitry switching over in some stuff causes clicks, but it's usually the transport. Do you find it MT Mercer? Sorry, I haven't been watching the chat, so I haven't really caught up on what's happening there. I'm just watching the green lights to make sure everything's streaming still. Do you find it easier to listen to dynamic HPs like the Utopia or more laid-back diffuse presentations like the Ether Flow at lower volumes? Lower volumes dynamic HPs easily because you can hear all the micro detail. Actually, it's nicer to listen with, say, Utopias or HG800s at lower volumes because then you have less interference, spacing around your ear, and you can in a way it sounds nicer, especially if a quiet background. It's been getting really hot lately, so I had the aircon up, and it makes listening really irritating. So that can be a problem. So, but if you have a quiet environment and then listening at low volumes can be really pleasurable with nicely recorded music. Are there any scenarios where you like crossfeed? Yeah, stuff that was like recorded, which is extremely left and right, where they just literally put it in one channel or the other. That can be crossfeed, like old Beatles and whatever. That can sound really nice, and some old jazz, which is recorded like that, is better with crossfeed. Is there a difference between crossfeed and the Rune versus the Hugo 2? I haven't tried Rune's crossfeed, so there's your answer to that. I just haven't tried it. Often if I'm listening to music, I have the Hugo 2 here, so I'll just hit the crossfeed button, and then that's it. But I do. It's so rare now that I actually do that. Space Robot, is Rune worth the cost? Well, if you use it all the time, it's worth the cost. So. I use it all the time, so it's worth the cost to me. But for having I have stuff on Tidal, I have stuff in my own library, because before it would be like, I want to use Tidal, do I have to open the Tidal app or should I open Audivana Plus? Audivana Plus is pretty good if I was using everything direct. If I'm plugging everything into one computer and I have a monitor here just for that computer, I would have used Audivana Plus. But the thing is, now I want to stream to multiple DACs and say A/B them, so I want to listen to one, and it's just easier to select all the DACs and hit group zone, and then have it output to everything at the same time, and then I don't have to think about it. Or if I want to A/B a particular section of music between say two amps or DACs, what I can do between two DACs basically, I can play it listening on one and then have it set up on the other and pause each of them individually or whatever I like very easily, or pause and restart each. It's much easier to handle that. So for me, it's worth it. But if you have a lot of stuff and you just want to be able to, and you're like me routing a lot of stuff between a lot of gear, then it's kind of very handy. But for managing music, it's very handy because you could have a bunch of libraries, you could have stuff on a network attached storage, you could have stuff in one computer, you could have stuff on Tidal, and you just have to search for a piece of music, it will just come up. So in that, and I like reading about the artists, which is good too. For most of them, they have information. Where are we at? So what's your favorite amp under 2000 USD? At the moment, because of its neutrality, the Master 9, but the Soundaware P1, and that's, again, I haven't put everything back, it's sitting on another shelf, was the nicest and easiest to listen with in general. In terms of just plugging in and enjoying listening was the nicest so far. It's 1400. The IHA one, of course, it very much depends on how you set it up. So an IHA one with a nice rectifier tube and nice tubes was very nice too. What else was there? That's all I've had in $2,000. There's a lot of tube amps out there I've never tried, which are apparently really, really good. So that's, the stuff I've tried has been good. I've not had anything really bad under $2,000. Or anything that was kind of... the only thing that wasn't good value under $2,000, I think it was $1,400 as well, but I can't remember, was this Bakun amp. It was not the main model that was... There's two Bakuns, it's kind of confusing. One is Japan. The original Japanese one only sells in Japan, and there are a couple of dealers that sell the models for some reason or another. And then they had the Korean version, which was done by a different guy, but it was still used the same tech. And the Korean stuff wasn't as good as the Japanese stuff. And they had this $1,400 amp that was a total disappointment. It's not that it sounded bad, it's just the level of detail retrieval in it was bad. It was just, and it was a current output amp. And it had two sockets, one for current output, which worked with planars, and one for voltage output, which was designed for things like HD800s. And just the sound quality was just not good. The voltage output was not good for a start. The current output had not much detail, and I thought, I was so disappointed, and that was the one I sold on immediately. So that was actually through Massdrop 2 years and years ago. Very funny story about that, I could tell it another time. But that was the only disappointing one, but everything else has been fine. What are we at? Fish Commander. We're up to Fish Commander. I'd like to know your favorite amp also, but one deviation. Favorite solid-state amp versus favorite tube amp and favorite hybrid. Well, same answer. For detail, this has the most detail still, but considering it ideally works best after 4 hours of warm-up time, and it's just going to heat this room when I've got the air conditioning on. My aircon's cut out, which means either it's cool in here or the outside thing is overheated. Probably it's cool enough in here. This sound aware was really nice, and the IHA one if you like tube rolling. Solid state, but favorite tube amp, no holds barred. Well, the studios, the no holds barred was the Cavalli Audio Liquid Tungsten. That was fantastic, and I wish that went on sale. I'm going to try the monoprice one still. I've still got to see about that. I'm going to try the monoprice one and see how good that is. But we'll get around to that. Favorite solid state, favorite tube. Well, I've always liked the Studio 6, but it's a little bit lacking in power. So maybe something will succeed that one day, which will be really good. So you've been doing reviews of relatively affordable products recently, e.g. the LX, which is great. However, I don't think anyone is expecting you to sell for your Utopias anytime soon. How do you feel about your current set of gear on loan and owned? Are you happy with it? Okay. So actually, I'm really happy now with Utopias straight out of the Hugo 2 with my good digital setup. I think that M scaler plus Chord Hugo TT2 looks fantastic, but horrendous, really, really expensive. If I sold off everything I owned, then I could probably just wing it. I'm not sure. But I'd have to, if I've sold off amps, I'd have to sell off a lot of if I sold off a bunch of camera gear and a lot of other gear, I could pay for it. But that's probably would be my ideal setup, because then I don't have to think about it. That's going to be the kind of the challenge. You have gear that's, this is the Master 9 is as it is. You get one flavor. IFI is totally opposite. You can play around with switches and knobs and things in the settings and subtly tune it to your preferences. The Hugo 2 kind of is revealing of stuff that Rob Watt's take on it is that the reason some stuff doesn't sound good with the Hugo 2 is that some iems or headphones is because those iems or headphones are bad. They have issues, and so. But there's an interesting thing. I was listening through the EAR 4 amp, which is the legendary tube amp, and it makes everything sound so amazingly euphoric. And Tim DeParavicini has partnered with another British firm to make some headphones. And out of the Hugo 2, they don't sound so exciting, but out of the EAR 4, they sound fantastic. So, well, I don't know. That's kind of a puzzle. Everyone has their own ideas about the best. And you took the IFI guys. The IFI guys disagree with Rob Watts. Rob Watts disagrees with various other people's approaches, etc. Everyone has their own idea. So but if in the end, I was listening to this combo and I'm really enjoying it. So I know what I'm missing because I've got other gear, but it doesn't. If you're enjoying it, who cares really in the end? Okay, now we're up to, that's the end of the questions. Now, okay, let me just check. I'll just check that you guys can all hear me, because we've had some funky issues, which I think were caused by Amazon Drive hijacking bits of my system in ways that I didn't like. So, okay, that's good. So I haven't been ranting and everyone's been cut off. So after I killed Amazon Drive, everything has stopped screwing up. So I know Amazon Drive is responsible. We're getting on, now I'm going to scroll back the chat and see if I can... let's just... I've got to scroll right back and find out what questions... Law of diminishing returns. Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a good question, actually. So, it came up because... Now, if you all haven't, Brooko is now writing his reviews on my site. And Brooko is like... when I was admin of Headfire, he had the highest reputation of anyone on the whole site other than Jason Stoddart. So... he does very comprehensive reviews. Let me just grab some electronics here. Where is it? Okay. So he reviewed the Q5, which I've got in my setup. I've got the funky rack of charging rack there now. And he said I can't remember if he said it in his review or he said it on the forums. He said it could be endgame for a lot of people. So stuff like this, yes, it can be. And it to me comes down to music. Well, apart from headphone quality, these are a significant, I use these as a standard because I can hear clearly what's going on. If I'm losing any detail I have a few recordings which are just amazing in terms of level of detail retrieval. Friday night in San Francisco, 3 guitars. You can hear, the mics are really close up to the guitars, and obviously the recording's high quality. You can hear the level of reverberation after a note is played. And the better the gear you have, the more you can hear into that. So Hugo 2, optimally set up, you can hear the most reverberation. And then just behind that, Yggdrasil and Audio GDR 2R7, where it's still a little, the reverberation is a bit one note. It's like this, Hugo 2 and better, you can hear the decay. If you open up a piano, go up to a grand piano, hit a note and hear all the harmonies and the note will cause harmonic distortion through as it affects the other strings. A single note playing will affect the other strings. And then listen as those, or you play a chord and listen to the harmonies interact and decay. Now, this is what I'd like to do ideally, is actually record close mic straight into something, straight up recording of note decay straight out of a piano, because there's a place down the road that sells grand pianos and Steinways and all that. And this is coming back to this. Believe it, it's coming back to this. And I want to hear... when I was a child, I had a piano, so I used to listen to this stuff. I found it fascinating. So it's stuck in my head. I want to record just straight up chords being played on a piano, just like and so that I can hear the decays, and then I'm going to use that as a reference, as a detail reference. Now, a lot of stuff, which after it's been recorded and then remastered and all that, just doesn't have any of that level of detail like modern. A lot of music, even I listen to, just doesn't have that level of detail. So having like really stupidly expensive gear is just no benefit. The electronics nowadays, something like this can do 90% of what you need to listen to most music. But that really high quality stuff, those high quality recordings, have something so much more in them. That's where the high-end stuff comes in. So I think someone lamented that they were at a meet back when, back when a lot of the meets people brought their own gear rather than it was less manufacturers and more people bringing their own rigs. And someone had purchased a top of the line rig, eddy current balancing act, and it may have been a Yggdrasil, I can't remember, it may have been before Yggdrasil, something like a top of the line rig anyway. And so they go up and they say, oh, really nice rig, you know, you bought what was the current pop flavor of the month, flavor of the year, or whatever popular top of the line gear. And so they listened to the music he had all crap music. And it's like, why did you buy this really expensive system to listen to this rubbish? They didn't say that, but that was the feeling. And it just didn't make sense. And the benefit of that stuff is, you know, for most music I could probably listen, I'm not going to say this, I'm going to say the Mojo. But something like this, for most music I listen to, yeah, this would probably be fine. Or something like around this range, around this chord Mojo, XDSD, fine. But for some of the music I have, you know, the benefit of this is extra. But, you know, you're paying a lot more money for that maybe, in a way, bit of music that can be, is not a majority of the music I have or have access to through Tidal or whatever. So in a way, but I mean, then you have Tidal, and then you're rediscovering all this stuff. Like I would have never have listened to jazz without this kind of thing. I got into jazz purely because then jazz, you know, like through a radio sounds like, well, that's kind of boring. But when you listen to like some of the how, you know, like the piano experience, how notes decay, how the feeling that the players put into playing the instruments, that kind of thing, the kind of emotional content. Makes it really enjoyable, and I just wouldn't have got into it if I hadn't been for a high-end system. So that's my thought on law of diminishing returns, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll and see how hot is it in Japan. Japan has had a heat wave. Down here it's not too bad. It's about 32 to 34 degrees during the daytime, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. 32 degrees Celsius is, so it's heading up here, it heads up to about early 90s, so 34 is what? 93 Fahrenheit, so 90 to 93 during the day, and which isn't too bad, but some of the rest of Japan has been getting like closer to 100 Fahrenheit and about 40 degrees Celsius, so which is pretty bad. But it's not on and off, it's like continuous, like every day is exactly the same. So it's been crazy hot every day, and they've had things like kids going on excursions and dropping dead, which shouldn't happen. Like, so they've cancelled stuff, they've cancelled festivals. Swimming pools are beginning to get so warm. They've actually, during summer, all the elementary schools here have swimming pools. So in the summertime they have supervised access. So they have the teachers there, and they can come, or someone there, and you can come in and swim if you're a student. And they've actually closed some of the swimming pools because they've become too warm. It's become too hot. So it's been pretty crazy. This is Japan. Is abnormal for Japan. So normally it gets hot, but you know, not too unbearable. And this is not even August. August gets as brutal. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out this summer. And it means I'm going to have a nasty aircon bill as usual. So the thing that slowed me down is this stuff puts out a lot of heat. This puts out a lot of heat. All the other amps put out a lot of heat. So if I switch everything on for a comparo, it gets really hot in this room, and I have the aircon. And the only way to cool it down is to have the aircon on full blast, which is really noisy. So it's kind of impossible. So I kind of do it piece by piece. Like I'll do just this setup, or I'll do just another setup. So it's pretty irritating. Do I have experience with the IFI iCam Micro? No, actually, I was going to ask about reviewing them when the XDSD came out, so I went for the XDSD. Will I do a review of the HD50X Jubilee? Massdrop are sending me stuff. I'm not sure what's going to be in the box. I'm going to find out. So that's the answer to that. Okay, where are we? How's a Patreon? Where can I ask you for the question? The next Q&A. I usually post I forgot to post a message for patrons saying what are your questions for the Q&A. But you can or the chat. If you jump onto the Discord chat, I have a channel for that too. But yep, You bought the Sundaras. Okay, want to bump the bass a little. You have a classic shit stack. I'd try the Locky and see how you go. Just try it. Yeah, that might work. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Yeah, I just try it. That'd be interesting. I actually want to review the Locky for the reason that I was curious about it. It's an interesting idea. I was going to talk about probably when I finish the review for this, which is half done. I'll talk about this. You know, like the iFi gear has the extra bass thing, which can be good when you want to bump the bass, because a lot of the stuff you want to do does involve just bumping the bass. And like I talked about in the Sundara review, it was a nice match with this because you just bump the bass a little bit. I think that's the most common complaint. Like, everyone wants neutral headphones, but sometimes you just want to bump the bass. Okay, now we'll get into the big bunch of questions. And sorry I missed everyone's asking questions. Have you heard the EAR headphone? Yep, so I answered that already. So yes, it sounds nice out of the EAR 4, but yeah, I don't know. They're interesting planers. I was going to try and get them in for review, and then yeah, I don't know. Does listening to music in Japan get annoying in the summer, especially with the cicadas? Oh, the cicadas! Did I post the video I made? I did a noise cancelling test of. I actually got them here. The now renamed Feel Me Now headphones, which actually succeeded really well. I stood between. I don't know if I posted it, but it's on. I do have it somewhere. There are 2 trees outside, full of cicadas. I think they've been trimmed back, but before they were trimmed back, they were chock full of cicadas last summer. And I recorded 90 dBs A-weighted between those trees of cicadas. A-weighted, so it was actually louder, depending on how you measure it. It'll probably go up about something 90, 95, depending on the weighting you set on my thing. That was really loud. I mean, that's kind of if you stood there long enough, you get hearing damage level. Holy hell, they so annoy me. And thankfully, this is a newer house, and it has double glazed windows, so it's not too bad. But if it was cool and I opened the windows, it's like, just the noise is shocking. And then they all die off, so you have dead cicadas everywhere. So yeah, but it's not too bad inside where I am. I can hear a few buzzing out there now, but yeah, in my old apartment, it was just the whole street was like lined with trees, it was full of cicadas, and I hated it. I have a really simple question. Where does everyone find their well-recorded music? HD tracks. There's some stuff you can download. There was a list. Okay, go into the articles section on HeadFi. I think I assembled a list of where you can get high-res music. No, there's a thread where you can get free high-res music. Free lossless music, maybe it's free lossless or free high-res. There's a whole thread about it. So there's stuff out there. Yeah. There are a few places. There's also a whole thing about where to buy lossless music online. That was in an article, and I kept it up to date, but it's a shared article, so anyone can keep it up to date. And there are heaps out there now that you can do. But usually I just listen to Tidal as the simplest. But now I'm starting to think, because I found out that Universal Music is inserting distortion into all their watermarking, audible watermarking into their music. That I want to get back to. If I had a lot of money, I'd just buy up CDs. Actually, now it's starting to get irritating. Thoughts on final audio products? Yeah, I want to review the headphones, the high-end headphones. That's kind of on my list. I saw the prototypes and listened to the prototypes originally, which sounded good. So I do want to try those. I just have to contact them and ask, really, and see if I can. Amia, I own a Chord Mojo and Andromeda. I was scratching my head about the Hy-B R3 to use with the Mojo. I guess so. It's just that the cable, I think it works using USB out. I'm not sure. I think it does, but I think it's just the fiddly part is the cable. I think they use the same as the FiO digital out, and for that, I actually designed to use for stacking Was that the one? Yeah, it was this one. I actually made my own cable for Theo or Hybe, which uses the same pin out to stack with things like Mojo and Hugo. That's the only fiddly thing. I think the R3 works using USB, so I guess if it does, it's just the fiddly thing as the cable. But yeah, it should be good. Generally, I found that Theo and I guess Hybe, their digital output is good enough. Some of the early Astel and Kearns, the optical output, seemed for some reason not to sound as good, and I don't know why. So, I mean, if you've got the budget for it, I'd just try an R3. I think there was one reason I didn't go with the R3, and I can't remember what it was. Just for me, there was some reason I decided not to. I can't remember what it was. There was something that said, oh, and then, no, that's got missing some... I think it was something to do with Bluetooth for me, which would have been useful. Would you recommend buying the Chord Mojo or wait for the next version? I don't think there's going to be a new Chord Mojo in a really long time. Theo Q1 is great at $99. I should try the $99 stuff. That little Blue Wave Get thing was actually been really good for $99, and there's another similar one with balanced output, which I've just forgotten the name of, which is supposed to be really good too. What is a reliable headphone amp DAC combo for under $500? Okay, that's an interesting question. My answer: Sony Bluetooth headphones. I wouldn't. If you've already got headphones, it's different. But if you're thinking of starting from scratch, I would. If you're $350 to spend, I'd buy the 1000X, the noise cancelling headphones. Someone goes, "What should I get for $500?" I say, buy noise cancelling headphones. The Sonys. I just say do that, and the reason is because they've become so good now that they've become so good now. It's kind of killing off that this stuff has had to catch up. Like the Theo. Reliable headphone DAC amp combo. Well, the ones I've reviewed, I've had the Q5. I've had the if you want Bluetooth, the XDSD, which is I do have sitting here. So it depends what you into. If you want Bluetooth, the XDSD is good. It's a scratch magnet. Keeping scratches off this thing has been a nightmare. Second hand or cheap Mojo if you are just going to use USB, and that because you can get them for under $500 if you know where to look. So those things I've reviewed have been good, but the thing is, Bluetooth stuff, even the $99, $129 Bluetooth stuff, has caught up so much. The only thing you lack is power. Big battery, more power. Small battery, less power. So it depends what you're going to listen with. If you just listen with iems and, or if it has to power off your phone, you're going to not have as much power. Bigger batteries, more power, better headphone drive. Or you can switch modules in this to, for preference too, for longer battery life. So generally they've been good. Besides the jazz albums you mentioned, are there any other audiophile recordings that you never listened to otherwise? I mentioned sometimes there's some Decca recordings. Decca have some really nice recordings. The last one I really liked was Julia Fisher. She's playing Sarasate on, I don't know if the pronunciation is correct, on violin, and that's incredible playing. That's kind of Vivaldi level playing, that stuff would just make no sense on cheaper gear, because the whole thing is just, you can hear down to the minutest movement of what she's doing with the violin. So that's probably a really good example. But there's a lot of classical out there which becomes more interesting. Yo-Yo Ma, there's a lot of stuff done by him with various people which is really interesting, or just even really good classical, popular classics. Are really, with orchestral works, are really exciting with a good system, and like people who've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a huge system, they aim to reproduce the effect of being at the orchestra when they listen. So, which is why you have big stereo systems. If you're just doing it to listen to small stuff, it's kind of pointless. I should do the Astel and Kern apps. I've just got to contact them as well. There are so many things I want to do, and it's just a matter of getting organised and not overwhelming myself. Okay, Eon or LCD2C. I only briefly tried the LCD2Cs, and maybe because they kind of have that old darker sound, I don't like them so much. So probably Eon is a safer bet. Um, but you know, like I remember the original LCD2s, I owned them and they kind of sounded dark. But then once you listen to things like Michael Jackson, they really make sense. So, but I only tried them again in store briefly in earphone in Tokyo, and I didn't like the LCD2C. So that's just me. But if you listen to like really a lot of modern pop, modern music, maybe the LCD2C would work better because it is there kind of darker and it balances up against the kind of really the brightness of the a lot of modern stuff. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Soap Morning from the UK. How much difference do you hear between single-ended and balanced output? Okay. Oh, okay. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining. Okay. I probably said this before. If you have an amp which is designed as balanced, it's probably going to work better using the balanced outputs than it's going to using the single-ended outputs. So they can tend to sound a bit... These Audio GD sounds a bit weaker out of the single-ended output. I mean, you're cutting out half the circuit. So stuff will work best used at its optimum environment. If you have an amp that is all balanced all the way through, it's going to usually work best with the balanced inputs and balanced outputs. The balanced inputs usually, like if it's run through a phase splitter or whatever, usually isn't going to affect things significantly. So I found that, for example, Master 9 from the Mojo, Hugo, no problem. And I've tried the Pro iCan. I plugged in the Yggdrasil from its single-ended and balanced outputs and heard no difference. But this isn't the most detailed amp, so maybe any difference that might have been in there is kind of lost. So in the end, the output is the key thing. If the output is ideally meant to be balanced, then use that. The opposite, of course, is chord stuff, which has balanced outputs, but it's a single-ended circuit. It's designed to be used single-ended, but has the balance there for people who need it, want or need it. There was a lot of esoteric DACs. They work best out of single-ended outputs for the same reason. The whole circuit was actually single-ended. And it's a design choice for what they consider the most optimum for their design for whatever reason. So it's the output that's the key, the input not so much. So that's the kind of difference. But I mean, should I buy balanced? The difference between these things is all circuit. It just so happens that what we call a balanced circuit, which is not, headphones aren't really balanced anyway. What we call a balanced circuit is a particular design choice by the engineer. It just so happens that that particular design choice requires a different output plug. So instead of a single-ended plug like I have here, you require a balanced plug. Or actually separate. What it really means is it's not really a single-ended or balanced. It's like the signal return for left and right is combined. It's the same as the ground. Whereas for what we're calling balanced, the signal returns are actually amplified in reverse to the positive. So the negative is amplified as well. It's not connected to the ground. So we need a different connection. I mean, it's like you could have an amp with tubes, and it could be a straight tube amp. It could be a tube hybrid. It could be a transformer coupled tube amp, but the plug's still the same. We don't have to care about that. It's just because when we have a differential circuit, we require a different plug to the normal one which combines the signal returns, that we actually have to care about that. So it's not about balanced or single-ended so much as just you use the output of the amp that's most optimum. And I mean, you have amps out there which have outputs for different kinds of headphones, and you use the output that's the most optimum. Or you have things where you can switch the gain, use the gain that's the most optimum for the volume range you want. It's just that really. So not so much about whether a single-ended balanced is better. That was originally a marketing thing by Headroom, years and years and years back, that it was better. But it was a completely different circumstance then. Okay. Do you have plans to read the Bear Dynamic Amazon Wireless? Yeah, Bear Dynamic's been on my list for a long time, and I should do something about that. So, the Sony 1000X are much better. I should actually just review the Sonys. I don't know why I've not got around to that. It's probably just I've been forgetful. How Have you tried connecting the XDSD to a Mac? Yes. Can you get 768K? I connected this worked with 768K. I used Adivana Plus upsampling and it worked with no problems using a USB 3 cable. I don't know if this is actually USB 3 input. I should check. The XDSD, did I get 768K? I think I only got 384. I think I only got 384. I don't remember it being 768. But there are different firmware versions. So the MQA firmware for this sacrificed some of the high res. It sacrificed DSD 512. I remember, but you could get the older version of the firmware, which would kill MQA but allow high res input. So yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. It could be a firmware thing. I'll have to check because, but you know, if you want to use your own, you know, digital filters, then you can. I mean, for something at this kind of level, I think what it comes with is fine. In terms of, you know, I wouldn't bother setting up, you know, Adivana Plus to upsample to this because it's, you know, it's like a $400 product. It's not something I'd really consider something where I can make a difference. Whereas with things like, you know, you have with this, maybe you could try your own filters. Maybe you could make a difference because, but though they do have a high tap filter already built in the transient or line one, so maybe it's kind of unnecessary. But for a lot of DACs where things like the R28, playing with upsampling can be of benefit because the digital filtering in the audio GD stuff still isn't quite as sophisticated as what you can get elsewhere, as far as I understand anyway. Do you consider the Hi-Fi Man Edition X V2 a high-end headphone? Yep, I'd say so. It's a bit expensive. I mean, I've said before, I wish it was kind of, you know, a few $100s cheaper. Like if it was $2,200, $2,300, it would kind of be more realistic. But yeah, it was a really nice pair of headphones, and for a while, pretty much my main pair of headphones. I decided to go find a good value secondhand pair of Utopias, which I did. So, is it a Race 3 keyboard? Yes, it is. It is. So, I said in my last live stream, I was into mechanical keyboards actually, quite a long time ago. Before I really understood. Well, I knew what I understood how keyboard. I buy secondhand bits of computer stuff and pull it apart and investigate it. And I had, when I was a teenager, it was floating around in storage. Really nice magnetic reed switch computer keyboard pulled out of God only knows what. And now I wish I'd kept it and seen if I could actually get it to work as a normal keyboard. I probably would have had to have completely disassembled the circuit board and had my own custom circuit board made so I could put the magnetic reed switches in the perfect position for all the whole thing to sit on top. It probably wouldn't have worked. But yeah, actually now it's like I come back and these things are a big deal, so I can actually buy a really nice keyboard with exactly the key pressure I want. So yeah, so I actually trying to fit a full-size keyboard on my desk with all the crap I have on my desk was kind of a challenge. So it's actually just the right size. Although I miss someone not have some of the Apple keys, which I which I sometimes used to use. DT700, 1700. I've never tried. Have I tried the new Meze Empyrean? Only briefly to meet. We're talking to Meze about reviewing them, but they're going to be limited edition, and they're not sure if they're going to send one over or not. But it's going to be, again, it's going to be limited edition. I mean, it was at like the Tokyo Headphone Festival, so I didn't really listen for long. And they were in the lobby of one of the floors, and it was, while not noisy, it was like those places are really bad for trying to get impressions on stuff. It just, like, background noise just tends to interfere. And that's one thing too, when you have open back headphones, they tend to sound, I've noticed, say on airplanes and in more crowded environments, I tend to feel that headphones have a harsher presentation than they do in quieter environments. So especially at meets, I tend to be a little bit not try and hold too much of an idea about how open back headphones sound, because they tend not to sound like they do once I get them back here. Although I did could take a Hugo too, so I could get a consistent, impression of stuff. But otherwise, yeah. So that's about where we're at as far as the stream goes. For those people who missed, one of my patrons, Kai, has won a Kozoi little portable DAC amp thing, Aegis, and I'll be contacting Kai with that. So thank you once again, all people who supported me. Actually, it's been, as I said at the beginning of the video, for people who did miss, it's been extremely helpful. And I was basically the education department in the city has rorted people, fired all the teachers and rehired them at a lower rate and with a different job, and then paid more money to a company, more money per hour to a company to dispatch teachers who are getting only a third of the money of that money, and it's such a rort. It's not funny. It's a disaster. And so actually, it was a choice between basically quitting all this review stuff and going full time into a job, or mixing up the part time work again and doing this as a kind of part time thing as well. So actually, it's made it possible to continue doing. So last questions. Sony Z1Rs. Would I be happy with a Cascade or Z7 for a portable pair? I'd say that's a tricky one. If I modded the Z7, which I did the tape mod, that kind of cleans up the sound so they're almost Cascade level. The Cascades, I want to wait until Ken comes out with a different headband. So that's my answer. So it's kind of close, but the Sonys are more comfortable, but they need to be modded, for me personally, ideally, because if you have Z1Rs, you're going to hear the lesser quality treble of the Z7s, but after you mod them, they kind of sound like a little bit less spacious Z1Rs. So the Cascades are kind of less comfortable, but they're more portable because you can fold them up, and they do sound really nice in their own way. You can tune them slightly to your preference. Actually, there's also some I don't know if you call them vegan pads, some cloth pads available. I'm going to try those out too if I can. Have I listened to the H820? Not yet, but I've got to borrow a pair. Again, it's on my list. Final D800's on my list. I have a list that's like this long, but if it all came at once, I'd be like, oh God, where do I start? There'd be stuff sitting here for a long time. And some stuff I can borrow, they go, yeah, just hold on to it for a while. And then the other people are like, no, you have 2 weeks and that's it. So I don't. I'm going to start refusing the 2-week stuff. If they say you only have 2 weeks, I'm going to say no. And the reason is because I've missed stuff. I've gone back through things like my Eon Flow Open review, and I've gone, oh God, I missed this and I missed that, and I've missed stuff. So because I'm not doing this, sitting here all day listening to music and trying stuff, and I'm in and out all the time, I'm going to refuse. If they only say you can only have it for 2 weeks, I'm going to say, sorry, it's not long enough. It's got to be at least a month because I just missed too much stuff. So, and the other hand of that is I've probably pissed some people off by having stuff for here too long. Are the IFI IM match and the Ultimate Ears line drive the same thing? I think the line drive is amplifying as well, maybe. I mean, it's powered. The IEM match is just like inline resistors, so you get a lower output impedance. I think it just lower output impedance, and it reduces the output volume as well. Have you ever hit a point where the fun and high-end audio came to an end for you and ever get tired? Yeah. It can get really tiring. I think. When have I become? I think sometimes I get stuff, and when I just get it, it's kind of new and exciting. Even if it's just stuff I've been sent to review, but if it sits here too long, it's kind of like, well, I'm bored now. Okay, but in the other hand, I get to a point where if someone asked me about it, I could rattle off everything I need to say about it off the top of my head, like in this live stream. So when it gets to that point, I go like, now I should make a video. Now I feel comfortable making a video. Now I understand the product enough. I can just do it straight off the top of my head. Because I've tried scripting videos, and I've got little off Kickstarter and what have you, little things for my camera which I put on, so I can stick up my phone in there and actually have pre-done stuff. But I'm not as good as Jude, who does it brilliantly, and I prefer doing it off the top of my head and having it sounding more natural anyway. Hi, the official Aerophile channel. NFB 11 to power the focal clears. Maybe I should just get an NFB 11 in. I should get some of this stuff in. Well, it would work. I don't know about the clears, but maybe the LX. I'm just thinking like the clears you could probably... I mean, it would work, but you probably want better. That's just my thinking. But it's been a while since I've tried the cheaper audio GD stuff. I'm planning, this is in my mind, to do a $350 rig comparison. And I'm waiting for something, which I can't talk about, but I'm going to wait for something. And then I'm going to do a $350 rig comparison. And then it will be a little bit interesting. Now, then I'll get the audio GD, and then I'll get, say, a shit stack in. And what was the other thing? I'll probably compare, portable stuff, and mass drop was the other one. Yeah, mass drop. I'm working on getting a mass drop stuff over as well. So what can you get for $350? And it'll probably be based around the LX and the Eon Flow Open mainly, that kind of thing, because probably I'm guessing that's where a lot of people, kind of the median point where a lot of people will have headphones, which I think would be which I want to do. I'm just waiting on if there are. I'm waiting on I'm waiting on something which again I can't talk about, and the second thing I'm waiting on is a manufacturer, hopefully the R2R DAC that they have, was Airist on mass drop. So I want to do, like, if I get an amp in, it's kind of like, well, I expect a lot of people will buy a stack, so I'm going to try and get a DAC as well. So that's kind of, or get a combo thing, and how much of a jump up is something like this, and that kind of deal. Whatever comes in, but it's happening a bit slower than I thought it would. So last questions before I, we've been going for about an hour and a half or something, haven't we? I was looking for with a timer. Yeah, almost an hour and a half. So last questions before we. Does your wife ever almost kill you for spending so much money in the hobby? She hasn't liked it, but I've been getting rid of stuff more than anything because it's just not affordable anymore, and I'm happy with what I have, and so thankfully, this stuff is the manufacturers have sent me, which is really nice. The downside to that is we have like our electricity system. We have solar panels on the roof, which is good, so we get some of it back, especially in summer. But having the aircon on all day, and then the electricity bill, like we have a little meter thing, and the meter thing shows you live what the electricity looks like. And when I get in, when I turn all this stuff on, she's like, have you got something switched on upstairs? It's like really noticeable. So that's kind of where it gets really ugly, is the electricity bill for that stuff. It's nice in winter having all this power stuff, but in summer it's brutal because then of course this has to be turned up high powered. And again, I said it earlier in the video, but once I start turning, when I had all the amps here, if I turn everything on for an amp comparison, it gets so hot in here. It gets like 30 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in. It gets to almost, late 80s in Fahrenheit. And even with the aircon on, and if I turn off the aircon what I'll do is I'll turn it on high power mode and then go out of the room for 10 minutes until it's cooled down again. And it's still showing like 28 degrees on the meter behind me. It gets ridiculous, so it's impossible. So ideally I should cycle everything. I should do big amps in the winter, and then I should do portable stuff in the summer. That would be more ideal. The Mass Drop THX, I really want to get one of those, and I'm really curious about that. Peace in the hobby. Yes, it's nice and peaceful. I don't have to worry about IM manufacturers hating each other, though I do pick up a bit of disagreement between people sometimes. When am I doing these next AMA? It's kind of hard to schedule because I have to have an hour and a half where I'm not going to be interrupted, so usually when the family are out. And it's now my kids are at home. That's kind of a bit difficult. That's because it's summertime here. So scheduling it is really difficult. And also it's like there are people who want to watch, and if I just cater for, like, say, the people in California where a lot of people are, then it's that affects people who say, like, if I do it like mid-evening California time is like really late New York time or whatever. Or, you know, if I do it mid-evening New York time, it's really, maybe people are still at work if it's a weekday in California time. And then there are people in other countries in Europe who want to watch it, and it's like middle of the night. And so it's kind of I try and cycle it around. And then, but finding a time has been really difficult. How do you reduce ear and listening fatigue? Don't listen so much. That's true. Sometimes first thing in the morning, everything sounds great. By the evening, everything sounds kind of boring. Just don't listen so much is the answer. Then you enjoy listening more. It's like how do you get over getting fatigued eating chocolate all the time? It's like eat less chocolate. Then when you eat chocolate only occasionally, you really enjoy it. It's exactly the same. Any idea about Odyssey LCD2 Classic? I said earlier in the video I tried it in Tokyo briefly, and maybe because it sounds like the classic sounds really dull. It's like, I guess if you listen to a lot of lively pop music, like I remember with Michael Jackson, original LCD2s were really fantastic. Stuff like that, but with a lot of other music like jazz, it just didn't work. So I think they're kind of more genre dependent. So maybe if you have fatigue, well, I mean, you're listening too loud. I mean, the other thing is to find a pair of headphones that sound really nice at lower volumes. So the nice thing is I can listen to Utopias at really low volumes because you hear so much, they're so precise. So, but if you're listening too loud, that's just bad, and that probably could be some of the problem that you have there. So yeah, you got to look at everything. And the other thing is with fatigue, if you listen too loud, and this is written about, Tyle wrote about it on Inner Fidelity, your ears automatically have a shutdown system where if you're listening too loud, they start to block out sound. So you sometimes go to meets and you find people have turned it up to 11, and how can you listen that loud? And it's actually their ears are shutting down automatically now. Well, they're damaging their hearing too, but it will shut down sound perception to a degree to try and protect hearing. So yeah, your ears have their own overload protection, and the result is that people will try and turn it up louder to compensate from that. It doesn't work. So that's actually a good reason why listening quieter is better. And there's a funny story. A guy came on to HeadFi and said, I'm powering HD800s out of my phone, and everyone was like, they're horrified. And they said, oh, no, you need an amp, you need a DAC, and all this stuff. And it's like, he was always careful to listen at only 70 dBs, which is above, this is speaking normally is about 60 dBs. 70 dBs, he listened really quietly, and then he tried an amp and all that, and he said, made no difference. And when he said 70 dBs, I said, look, everyone ignore your horror at him listening out of a phone. If you're listening that quiet, having an amp and all this stuff is going to make no benefit, because, there's zero benefit. I mean, this was way before, I think, this is before the Chord Hugo and Chord Mojo, so stuff that really could make a difference to perception of instruments. But it was an interesting factor. If you're listening quietly, the requirements you have for your headphones and especially the things that are high impedance are actually lower now, given the electronics we have nowadays. So, if you're older and you need more volume, yeah, some people, yeah. So if you're young or old, it certainly makes a big difference. And I don't think I've ever listened to music that loud. What I should do is find a pair of I should try actually with the these are supposed to go up to 20k with the new True Tone driver, so I should see how far my hearing goes with that, because I think a lot of people, interesting thing, there are online tests where you can test how good your hearing is, how high a tone you can hear before it drops off. And the thing is, I think everyone's probably the results are lower than expected, because a lot of headphones have a drop off between about 12, 14 kilohertz and 20. There's a big dip, and how much that is an artifact of the measuring gear and how much that is actually the headphones, I don't know, because that's been a whole major issue with measuring headphones. But it'd be interesting, because to actually measure your hearing, you have to have headphones or iems that go all the way up to 20k. And probably a lot of stuff doesn't. So probably a lot of people were testing just with whatever headphones they have, not aware that these headphones couldn't actually reproduce the high-frequency signals anyway. So it's really funny when you see that there's huge dips, and these are headphones that have the high-res sticker and all that on them, and because they reproduce up to 40 kilohertz, it's like, this is just stupid. But anyway, it's kind of really funny and really irritating at the same time. Tube recommendations for the Valley 2. Um, I think I just stuck the Amperex 6922. But the one that they had, the one that Mike recommended, and I've put it away. The Western Electric 2C51, and I think it needed an adapter to work. But you can get the adapters cheap off eBay anyway. Yeah, the Western Electric 2C51, one with the yellow writing, that was really kind of nice, really nice kind of tube. Mike Moffat posted about that on Headfire. He posted a picture, and that was the nicest. The kind of clearest sounding tube was the 6922. They're a little bit expensive, but I think it was a nice, not a bad lamp to kind of bump up the capabilities of. I've got to get it out again, actually. It's going to be part of the $350 comparison. It's still sitting in my cupboard. But the 6S and 7 tubes, well, you have to plug in like 2 adapters. You have to a spacer and then an adapter on top, and it kind of looks ridiculous. So I just stick with the 6922 series. I mean, it's just like I happen to have 6S and 7s when I did the review, and other people did too. So, but yeah, no, the small tubes are fine. DAC amp combo in the 1K per range. This is looking promising. Okay, that's going to be reviewed as soon as I get around to reviewing it. Have you heard that GE, General Electric, might be declaring bankruptcy? Nope, that's news to me. But these tubes are all new old stock, so they're from decades ago. No, these are all new old stock. They've never haven't been making tubes for decades, as far as I know. They're unless I'm mistaken, they do not know. Only people who make new tubes are in China and I think Russia, and maybe a couple of small makers here and there. But essentially, nobody make. I mean, there are Pavane, and there's a funny thing. It's spelled P-S-V-A-N-E. It was actually a typo. Okay, so they have a manufacturer of tubes whose name is a typo, but it looks cool. What's it? I've forgotten the other name. It'll come to me in a minute. The other tube manufacturer. I don't know. I've just gone on a blank. There's the Chinese manufacturer, the 2 Chinese manufacturers of tubes. They're people who make really bulk tubes nowadays. Everything old is new old stock. I mean, the transistor came in after there were millions of tubes made, and so that's right. There's still bucket loads of these things, sitting in warehouses. Still crap loads. It's going to be enough for a long time. So tubes are, finding General Electric tubes. These are all things there's still tubes you can get from the 1940s which have never been used. So this is how far back we're going. So it's nothing to do with General Electric nowadays. They've not made tubes for decades. RE2000 versus Campfire Atlas. I like the Campfire Atlas a bit better. So it was kind of like went Vega, and then I like the RE2000 better, and then I think I like the Atlas better. So it's a little bit, depending on how you set it up with tips, it was more even. The other thing is the RE2000 seem to be super tip sensitive. So other than the stock tips tend to kind of ruin the sound, like the original biflange. So that didn't work so well. Whereas the Atlas seemed to be much more flexible with how you could tune it, just like in the same way the Vegas were. So for example, I wouldn't do it now, but put spiral dots on the Vegas and the Atlas, and it would work. You put spiral dots on the RE2000s that sounded like, oh god, no. But there's now a version of the RE2000s which is, I think it was $1,300 or $1,400 without the gold plating, which is interesting, which is a bit closer to its realistic value to me. Thank you, S Leonard 79, for your compliment. New old gear, my life nutshell. eBay, endless. It's like watching YouTube and searching for stuff on eBay. It kind of gets endless. Okay, so that'll do for. I've been going for over an hour and a half. Where's my time? 1:32. So that'll do. Thanks once again to everyone, all patrons who are around, who supported me, and everyone who enjoyed my videos too. So it's been interesting. How often do you do this YouTube live thing? Oh, okay. I do it once a month. It was originally going to be just a private thing for patron supporters, But you know, like due to the timing, everyone's in different parts of the world. It was kind of, you only had like a couple of 5 or 10 people on, so I opened them up to public, so that, you know, we get like 30, 40, 50 depending how on the day, time of day. And so it was interesting because, you know, I get some interesting questions too. I'll talk about, thanks for the question about stacks. I'll talk about stacks when I get stacks in. So usually the stacks have sets. So like they sell sets with a pair of transducers and an amp. I'm not sure what they're doing now, but usually the matching set is usually about right. Hugo TT2, that's on my list. So is the M scaler, which will be interesting. It's going to be interesting if I get an M scaler in. Rob Watts says he can't listen to even the Hugo 2 without the M scaler now. That's going to kind of ruin me, but you know, the Dave did too. So great. All right, so thank you once again for watching. I'll see you all online in the future, and yeah, have a good night or day as the case may be.